boys and girls, this is Paulie with the SDML Academy of Guitar. In this video, I'm just going to show you how I change my guitar strings. This is by request of students, and I want to point out that, it's just how I do it. I am not a guitar luthier. I'm not qualified to give you advice on the ins and outs of the details of changing strings, but I'll show you the basics, how I've been changing them for the last 30 years or so, something like that. So it works out pretty well for me. But if you need something repaired on your guitar, I'm not your guy. You're going to want to do what I do, which is just to go to a good luthier or somebody who's trained on how to repair guitars. We're also going to go through several different bridge types. We're going to be changing the strings on this guitar right here because it kind of has your standard system on the bridge here with the bridge pins. But there are a couple different types, and we'll talk about what those are too. We won't be changing strings on that type, but I'll show you how they work. Oh yeah, and if you are a luthier or you do know what you're talking about and I've made some terrible mistake in my advice, by all means, please share that in the comments below. Or if you have any other advice or anything to add to it, something that I missed, that'd be really great. I'd appreciate hearing from you on that. Alrighty, so first things first, talk real quick about what tools that you might need. There's basically 3 tools that you need to change the strings on a guitar like the one we're going to be working on. One is a pair of wire cutters, another is a peg winder, and the last one is a bridge pin tool. Now, if you don't know what any of those things are, then you're probably better off just getting one of these. And honestly, pretty much no matter what, you're probably going to be better off getting one of these. This is a multi-tool. This is specifically designed for changing strings on your guitar, and it has all 3 of those tools built into it. So first, typically it opens up like this, and you can see that little gap right there is where you're going to have the string to clip the string. And then down here, you've got the peg winder, this little piece like that. It flops around like so. This goes over the tuner pegs, and you turn this like so to tighten and loosen the pegs. And then finally, this little thing down here is a bridge pin tool, and we'll go over exactly what that is. So that's the actual tool that I would recommend. They sell these in all kinds of instrument places. They typically range ballpark about 10 bucks. And then of course you're going to need a set of strings to change on that. As far as what the strings are made for, or made of, these are called phosphor bronze. Somebody who really knows what they're talking about could probably tell you what the different kinds mean. What does make a very big difference is this right here, the gauge of the strings, that's the thickness. These are what would pretty much be referred to as 13 gauge strings. That's referring to this number right there. That's the lightest string, your smallest string right there. And that is telling you that it goes to a range of 0.056. So these are considered medium gauge strings. They're usually a little heavy for people. Most people prefer light gauge strings, which would be around a 12 gauge string or perhaps an 11 gauge. You can get these as upwards of 14 and 15 gauge. Again, there's a lot of different reasons that you would do that. The part that you want to be concerned about when you're changing your strings is that you're using the same gauge strings when you change them. Otherwise, you'll change the tension of the guitar, and you'll have to probably do a truss rod adjustment to make up for that. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do on here now is to remove the old strings. I just have this guitar laying on a surface here. Typically you probably want some kind of block underneath the neck to kind of support it and hold it up. I'm not particularly worried about it. So we're just going to loosen each one of these. Which way you turn is typically like righty-tighty, lefty-loosey in this case. Turning it clockwise here to make that more slack. And I just keep turning that like so. It'll come off kind of in that fashion. It's kind of ugly. And at some point it'll be loose enough that you can just kind of unwrap it off the post and pull it out just like that. And you're going to have that little pigtail bend at the end there. And then you just kind of repeat that process for each string. I have heard people say that you should not take off all of the strings together at the same time, that you should replace them one at a time. I don't know how true that is. I've heard both things. I've heard some people say that it's really important. I've heard some people say that that's ridiculous. What I do know is that it's very time consuming. And that it's very difficult to do that, to get the strings off one at a time and put a new one on one at a time. Maybe that's the correct way to do it. Again, like I said, I'm not a luthier. I don't really know. Alright, So now all of those are off. This is always a good opportunity too to clean off your dirty guitar. That's a little embarrassing, but it's a work guitar, so it's not in the best shape ever. Okay. Okay, so now that we have done all of that, and we've got the strings removed from the post down here at the bridge, then we can see that they're still secured here by these little bridge pins. Sometimes these can just be pulled out by hand, but usually they're pretty snugly in there. Sometimes you can find that if you take the string and you can just push it in like this, feed it directly in toward like that, then the bridge pin tends to come loose so that you can pull it out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So this is where the bridge pin tool on your multi-tool can come in very, very, very handy. Basically the idea here is you should be able to take this and pry the bridge pins out using this little tool, like so. So that way I just took the bridge pin tool like this, right? Whoop. I just took this bridge pin tool and the bridge pin kind of fits in like that to be pulled out like so. So again, it helps to, if you can push the string in first to loosen that, then put the tool in and pull the pin out like so. You keep your bridge pins handy somewhere. These things are wily, but you should have 6 bridge pins just like so. And then from there, the strings simply come out of the holes like this. Again, I've never changed these before, so there's some fun stuff happening here. And so the ends of the strings have these little balls on them like so. That's what secures them into the bridge. And from there you just dispose of these. I tend to kind of wrap mine up kind of like this, or I just put them into like a spiral as a bunch like so. Maybe feed this end through like this. Yada yada. That makes it nice and easy to throw it away. And so now it's time to put fresh strings on. Again, I got my little packet of strings right here. These have probably been sitting in my gear bag for a couple of years. I tend to lose them. These are packaged in different ways. For this particular brand, all 6 strings are in one bag, like so, just in one plastic bag. And they've got a color coding system on there to tell you which strings go where. So here, it's telling us that silver, purple, green, black, red, and brass. That's the order that the strings go on from 1st through 5th, like so. So those little balls at the end of the string that we're securing them have different colors on them, and that's what corresponds with this chart. So personally, I have learned over the years to use scissors to open these up. If you just try to tear them open, it gets really gummy, and there might be a really cool way to open this, and somebody's gonna set me straight in the comments below, and that's fine. I'd kind of like to know myself how it was intended for these to open, but I typically just use a pair of scissors. And so you can see they're all kind of bunched together here, but they're usually paired up. So strings 1 and 2, the silver unwound kind, are there, and then the green and black one for strings 3 and 4, and then 6 and 5, those are typically together too. Personally, the way that I like to do this is I start with my lightest gauge string, put it in, and I work my way back from there. So the first thing I do is I get everything attached to the bridge, and I unwind these little guys like so. Hold this purple one aside. This one is my silver right there. Again, I'm having focusing issues, but that's a silver colored ball right there, and that's going to correspond with string 1. So I'm going to go ahead and feed that into that hole right there. Then I'm going to take my bridge pin like so. It's got a little groove right there like so. See that groove in it? And that groove needs to line up with the string. Once it's in, then it should line up like this, with that string kind of inside that little groove like so. That's how it aligns. So in this case, and I think in most cases, I'll put the string in the hole, and then that groove is going to be aligned with the nut or the headstock. It's going to be going this way like so. Then I'm going to hold it down and I'm going to yank the string like so, and that's what secures it into that bridge pin like that when I yank on it and put pressure just like so. And that's it. That's what I'm going to do for each one of these. I'm going to take the purple one. Again, your color coding will be different. It depends on what kind of brand that you get, but these are color coded. That will go in next. By the way, when they're not color coded, they go in order of thinness to thickness. So wherever that lowest number is string number 1, and then it's going to go whatever the next highest gauge is string number 2, and so on and so forth. So they will be sequential and in order. So as you can see, I'm just kind of draping these strings off to the side of the guitar just to kind of get them out of the way. So now they're all secured into the bridge like so. These shouldn't be just holding freely. They should be kind of anchored in so that they have gotten a good grip on the strings. Now some guitars have what's called a pinless bridge system. You can see this is my trusty old beat up Breedlove. But there are no bridge pins on here. Basically the way it works is the strings feed through these little holes, and you feed them through the bridge, and then they pull out over the bridge saddle right there. So they feed in going this direction into the guitar in like a little tunnel. When you do that, it helps to curl or curve the end of the string before you feed it through to get it over that bridge a little bit easier. So a little tip there. Now some electric guitars, actually all electric guitars, I've never seen an electric guitar with a bridge pin system. They're almost all pass-through type of bridges. So this one, the bridge on theirs has a more complicated bridge system, but it's basically the same idea where the strings are fed into these little divots right there. And then they pull through and they go over the saddle, the raised saddle, which is right there, and then moves through like that. So that's one type of electric guitar that works just like the pinless bridge acoustic guitars. But the most typical setup for a solid body electric guitar, as you can see here, there's no bridge pins and the strings do not feed through from the top. That's because they're being fed through from the back of the guitar. And this is kind of surprising sometimes to beginner guitar players, but the strings actually come in through the back here. So you can see on this guitar, we've got 6 holes lined up just like so. That's where you would feed the string in through the hole, and then, or this one in this case, and when you flip it around, it'll come up through this part right there. It'll actually come in between. I'm gonna get yelled at for how bad a shape this is in. This is a very old guitar. But anyway, it comes up in between this little piece right here and feeds over, and that's kind of how the saddle works on a solid body acoustic or electric guitar. It comes in from the back of the guitar, feeds through it and up and out into the bridge system, and then it goes on from there. All right, so now I'm coming up here back to the headstock, and I'm going to zoom in, or at least try to zoom in here on the string 6 post, so that you can see here that there's that little hole going through the post right there. So you should be able to see right there's a little hole. That's what we want to feed the string through. So I'm going to take string 6 right here. You can see that it's got the thick brass, or the thick part of the string is right there, but as you go toward the end, it gets really thin. And that thin part is designed so that we can get it through that little post hole, just like so. That's how it feeds through. Goes right into that hole, and you pull it on through. And then, I'm going to go over here, you want to make sure that the string itself is in the little corresponding divot right there, that it rests into that divot. Now it'll pop in and out as we're tightening it, but that's where you want it to be, is through that little divot and then through the post hole like so. I'm going to zoom back out now. If there's a controversial part of the video, this is going to be it, which is about how much slack to put onto the guitar string. Now me personally, my comfort level is about like that. That's about how much slack that I'm going to look at. I don't know how to describe this other than my fingers are at kind of a 90-degree angle here. That's probably about 2.5 inches from the fretboard, something like that. But that's about where I keep the slack. That's where I start tightening the string. And then from there, I come over to here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you. And this is where a little dexterity takes place, where I'm going to make sure that this is in the groove like so. I'm going to take my peg winding tool, and I'm going to kind of hold this into the groove. And as I wrap this, I'm going to start tightening this, and you can see where the string is going around the post, like so. I like to keep the string above the post like that. Again, just personal preference. But as I turn it, you can see now it's going to lock that string into place, just like so. I actually put a little more slack on here than I normally do, getting a couple of winds until I get some tension on there. And and then I can hear that I've got tension. And that's about where I stop. You don't want to over-tune these. And then I just kind of bend that into place to get it out of the way. We're going to be clipping that off here in a minute anyway. And then I'm just going to repeat that process for each string. And again, see it flipped over on me, so I'm going to flip that back. That's why I liked it to go over top, because it kind of anchors that string down. Your winds should be inside when you tighten these. It's important to note that, let me turn the guitar so you can see the headstock. These winds should be inside, going in and out around this way, not outside wrapping this way. So it's important to know that you're going that way, because when I go in the opposite direction, then they're going to be wound in the opposite direction. So here, I'm winding them counterclockwise, but up here, I'm going to be winding them clockwise to make sure that those winds are inside. That keeps them from bumping into each other and changing the tension on the guitar. So let me get back to string 3 here. And as you might be able to see, I didn't even get one full wind on that one, and it's in there just fine. You don't actually have to wrap it all the way around to get enough of a grab. All right, so now we have all of the strings are anchored. They're all around their posts. Everything is gone through the nut here, right there, and then goes all the way along. Strings are all on and anchored to the bridge. So we're most of the way there at this point. Everything is physically where it's supposed to be. So now we're going to take a look at how I go about tuning this after I've just changed the strings. There is already a video about how to go about tuning the guitar in general, but when you have fresh strings on, especially steel strings, one of the first things I like to do is to stretch those strings out. So I'll actually grab the string here, like around the 12th fret, and give it a good tug, like so. And watch your bridge pins. They like to try to work their way out, so keep an eye on them. Make sure you keep those kind of pushed down. You don't want those slipping out. So again, I'm pulling that like so to give it a little bit of a stretch, maybe an inch or two in each direction, and those strings are going to get a whole lot of slack when I do that. So I might give myself a reference note. You can use a tuner for that, whatnot, but then I just tune this until it's at about an E. That sounds like it's the ballpark. Let's check. Man, I am good. Look at that. Maybe you can see, maybe you can. See, now I've got video proof. I'm just a few cents above E. And I'm going to leave it a little high because the rest of these are going to go flat as we do it. So then I want to go to my A next. Next I'm going to have my D. Then G. And my B. And my next E. Then once they're kind of in tune, they're closer to in tune, and I'll stretch them again because it's kind of a process. And check those bridge pins again. Don't let those guys slip out. If you don't stretch them out like this, in my experience, you end up spending a week getting your guitar in tune because it just keeps going out until the strings break in. And this kind of speeds up that process. But now you can see I'm below a D now. I have to tune this up again to get it back up to E. And then I'll typically do it one more time. And now you can overdo this, you stretch them too far, they're gonna break. You gotta start all over again. And then finally, I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna take my tool here again, and then I'm just gonna snap off the slack here, the ends of these things. I try to get it really, really close to the post. Just be careful that you don't actually cut the next string next to it and snap your string and start all over again. But I keep them close to the post because the smaller those are, the less likely a finger's gonna get caught on them or anything like that. And then from here, once you've got all this taken off, then you can just do, follow the directions in the how to tune your guitar video, and that should be about it. Make sure you throw away your trash when you're done. And that's pretty much all there is to that for that kind of guitar. So that's essentially it when it comes to how I go about changing my strings on my guitar. You'll know when it's time to change them because they'll be kind of dingy sounding, they'll be soft, you can feel the divots in them, and they'll be discolored. But once you change them, it's great. It's like a brand new guitar. People love it, especially when, the first time a student or a learner changes their strings and they play it, they go, and it's so bright and it's got a wonderful sound to it. It's easier to play. Everything just kind of sounds better on it. It feels better, looks better. So new strings are nice. They're really nice on the guitar. So once again, I just want to say I'm not a professional when it comes to the actual hardware or repairs or anything like that. Changing strings is one of those pretty basic things most guitar players typically can do on their own. And again, everybody kind of has their own way of doing it. If you do know what you're talking about, please correct me in the comments below. I do not mind. In fact, again, I have a lot of questions myself I've answered when it comes to basic things like this. So anyway, thanks for your time, guys. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, just contact me or another one of our SDML instructors. We'll see you next time.